Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We have a guest speaker in Andy Riise, and then Nate is also online. And so you'll hear from him, I'm sure, at some point. I thought it would be better justice if Andy actually gave his own introduction of his accolades, and then we got started with the presentation right away, since we're try to keep this to 30 minutes as we always do. So Andy, I'll let you take it away.
Hey everyone, this is Andy Riise, and I got my partner Nate Last with me. We are from Design to Perform and Mental Grit Consulting, and we are mental performance coaches by trade. I focus on mental fitness and leadership, and today we're talking about mental fitness for endurance athletes and coaches. But what I want to do is I want to start off, want to be as interactive as possible here, so you walk away not only engaged, but you have something that can add value to you and to your team, both as an endurance athlete, or whether or not you're a hybrid athlete, and this brings you back personally and professionally as well too. So go ahead, and if you haven't already done so, if you go to the chat feature, you're going to see there's a link there to menti.com, and you're going to see a code that I put in there as well too. So click on your browser there and then enter in that code, and then you're going to be able to see a poll. And if you use Mentimeter or you haven't before too, the first question that we have today is what city and state are you calling from today? And I'm going to go ahead and share this screen here as well. Looks like we have Texas. Oh, we have Melbourne, Australia. Fantastic. I'm assuming that's Melbourne, Australia. San Marcos, Marble Falls. I know we have a lot of folks in Texas here as well too. Hopefully everyone in Texas is in the AC and trying not to melt with this ridiculous temperatures outside right now. Looks like a lot of folks are in Austin. Great. I'm located in the Houston, Texas area. Nate is located in the Salt Lake City area as well too. So we have representation. We're international here as well too. Well, wherever you're calling from, I just want to say thank you for taking the time in advance for joining us today. And again, we're talking about this idea of mental fitness. But the next slide is the big piece here too, is what do you want to get out of today? What is it today you're coming in with some preconceived notions, some expectations. What do you want to get out of this session today? And we're going to do our best to meet those expectations the best we can. So what do you want to learn today? Get some clarity, okay? And if you want to, if you put clarity, if you want to take yourself off of mute and say what you mean by that, that'd be great too. So we have some context. Clarity on mental fitness, I'm assuming. What else do you want to learn today? Anyone else? Some strategies, okay? Great. I know we have about 30 minutes, right, Natasha? So we're going to do our best to maybe get to that if we can. We want some tools. Okay, great.
How to avoid mental blockness when training.
Oh, how to remove mental barriers and mental blocks. Okay, great. Anybody else? Give it a few more minutes here.
In the chat, we've got fitness versus toughness.
Okay,
what that means.
Fitness versus toughness. We will definitely talk about that too. Okay, great. And we're going to continue to monitor that as well here. So I'm going to switch back to our presentation. Bear with me here. Okay, can we see that? Is that showing up, Natasha and Nate? So we talked about our intentions today too, but I'm just asking everyone for wherever you are is to be present. If you're on the road, or if you're at home, or wherever you are right now, maybe you're at work, getting ready for the work day. Hey, you're designed to perform in the present moment with present moment focus. So let's get present. Here's what we want to try to get at today is to understand what you're up against, whether you're a coach, whether you're an athlete, and how to use this laboratory of sport and your training that you're going through right now and your competition to be able to become the best version of yourself. We're going to talk about what mental fitness is and just debunk some myths about what it isn't, why it's important to you and your team. And we want to try to give you, if we have time, one skill you could put into action, because knowledge minus application doesn't really mean anything, right? But knowledge times application means infinite possibilities. So a little bit about me, and I want to introduce my colleague Nate first. So Nate Last is a mental performance coach. He has his master's degree, sport performance psychology. He himself is a longtime athlete. He's a multiple-time Ironman triathlete, multiple-time high-five Ironman triathlete as well too. Has been not only a competitor but a coach in that space for a long time. Works a lot with youth athletes, endurance athletes in the greater Salt Lake City area. Currently getting his MBA right now too, and he is a genius when it comes to taking really complex subjects, especially having to do with psychology, and then turning them into digital learning that anyone at any age can learn and put into action. To me, from my perspective, so I grew up in Northern California. Don't hold that against me. I got to Texas as fast as I could. My vehicle towards, going to the next level and going to college as a first generation student athlete was playing football for Army. So you picture me when I had hair. I am I'm follically challenged now, but this is back, when I was big, strong, and I thought I was physically tough. I was a fullback for Army. Turns out when I went to West Point, I was not as mentally tough as I thought I was, because it's a 47-month crucible that's designed to beat you down. And I was struggling. And then luckily I had this really unique student support resource where sport and performance psychology came into the U.S. military in the 90s. And I started working with a U.S. Army officer who had his master's degree in sports psychology, like I eventually became. And we started working on this idea of mental toughness. And I thought I knew what it was, but I started learning about confidence despite setbacks, composure in extreme circumstances, concentration amidst distractions, motivation, goal orientation, and how to be a better decision maker, right? And I didn't know it at the time because I was surviving. I just wanted to graduate and move on. But 100 days after I graduated, became a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army. And shout out to all of you who are veterans out there, or who are military spouses or family members. 9/11 happened, everything changed. And I'm 25 years old, and I found myself leading 30 men into combat for the first time. And it was very difficult. It was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. And I quickly found out that combat is a thinking person's game. And although my team was, we had to adapt to this enemy that wasn't fighting fair. It was hitting us with roadside bombs and sniper fire. And this linear fight that we had, this overwhelming firepower, was now not an advantage. And so we had to adjust. And what really carried the day for us was not just our social connectedness and our physical fitness, our technical prowess. It was really our mental toughness, or what I call our mental fitness, that really carried the day for us. And after my second deployment, when I was getting into combat coaching here, you can see this picture of me when I first got into coaching as an advisor with the Iraqi Army. After that deployment, I went back to West Point. I taught in the same center as a major. And at the time, we had more soldiers killing themselves than were dying on the battlefield. And ended up becoming, one of the Army's first resiliency trainers. Ended up starting a lot of the health and human performance programs in the U.S. military. And then, went and worked with special forces, jumped out of airplanes, put warheads on foreheads, deployed a few more times to Iraq and Afghanistan. You can see a picture of me here working with Green Berets and U.S. Army Rangers. And all by the while, I had this idea that I wanted to be a mental performance coach. But how does an artillery officer do that? Well, I do it by moonlighting. So I started side hustling and working with people like in the Seattle Mariners. And 2 out of the 3 people here are going to be first round Hall of Famers here, where I get off work and I go to work on their mental skills and their leadership here, what we call the Seattle Mariners Leadership Laboratory. And then I had a whole bunch of colleagues who were now mental performance coaches in Major League Baseball. So when I retired, I got this amazing opportunity here, to take care of my family, continue to do what I love. And so I went and worked for the Cincinnati Reds. Here's a picture of me and my guys here in the Reds. This is with the Chattanooga Lookouts. And I also had an opportunity to go write a book with my friend Nate Last and some other folks, which really kind of personified our philosophy, which is this idea of deliberate discomfort and growth through doing hard things. But I wanted to spend more time with this family because it's my most important performance. And so I retired. And so I left the Reds and I went back to Texas A&M and decided to start my own business last year. I got into triathlon because like a lot of veterans, I left during the pandemic. I started gaining a lot of weight, started getting out of shape. So I needed to go back and do hard things again. And through my friends like Nate Last, I ended up, doing my first half Ironman, this Waco, but it wasn't without challenge because as you all know that, hey, it's pretty easy to be mentally tough when everything's going your way, but your mental toughness or your mental fitness is really challenged when things don't go so well. Well, last year, this time I was training for my first half Ironman. I was raising money for a nonprofit called Warrior Riise, which helps veterans become entrepreneurs and start their own business, kind of like I do. Had trained for 6 months. I was going head to head against a former Navy SEAL, a Naval Academy graduate. And 10 days before I was supposed to go to Waco, where I met Natasha for the first time, I ended up crashing my bike. And like a lot of you guys and gals who are out there, team, you probably experienced this in your life. Well, I ended up cracking my ribs and collapsing my lung. And this is a picture of me with my buddy, who happened to be the first time I'd actually gone with somebody, out riding with somebody. I trained mostly alone. You know, of course, my buddy's a little sadistic, decided to take a picture of me in the moment. So not only did I collapse my lung and I broke my ribs, but if you notice here, these little green things, this is poison ivy that happened that was amazingly broke my fall. And I am hyper allergic to poison ivy. So here's me in the hospital, you know, writhing in pain. Thank God my buddy took me there too. But then I also broke out with poison ivy. Well, turns out I could not race in there, but I still went out to Waco, where this is just after I met Natasha here. If you were out there, you remember it was kind of rainy and hot and humid. Of course, I'm being a good friend. His nickname is the Mindful Frogman. This is my sign. It was trying not to suck. But for me, the reason why I was able to get 6 miles back from where I was with a broken rib and a collapsed lung, you know, one was because of my social connectedness with my friend. Thank God he was there with me to help me out. Number two was my physical training that I put in the time. I had a coach, a great coach. You know, I did not know about NVDM then, but I wish that I did. But it was about my mental training that allowed me to be able to detach from the moment, really focus my thoughts on getting to the next pedal, getting to the next mile, and making it home, so I could finish the training, not even knowing that I had that bad of a deal there too, right? And again, I'm still a work in progress. I am not the poster boy for mental toughness. I have post-traumatic stress disorder. I have TBI. I have my mental struggles as well too. But my purpose is to be able to help people like you who are in the arena, you know, overcome adversity and continue to be able to achieve your goals, like I did with my buddy Nate here and Daniel Roby, who was also a first timer, and which we were able to do it and probably do it better than we ever did had I not had an injury, you know, in Waco a year ago too. And it really sent me on this amazing journey. And I just think that endurance sports are this amazing opportunity, this laboratory for human performance to test your mind, your body, your team, your spirit. So that's why we're here with you, because you're actually in the arena, right? You're the ones who are trying to live a relentless life in pursuit of better, right? You know, and this is a quote that came from Teddy Roosevelt. You're familiar with it. That it's not the critic who counts, right? You know, there's probably lots of people who are asking you, why the heck do you want to go swim, bike, and run? Why the heck do you want to go run miles, you know, do ultra marathon? Why do you want to go do obstacle course racing? You know, why do you want to put yourself through that, right? And it's all about this relentless pursuit of better, right? Because the credit belongs to you, the person and the team who is actually in the arena. So what I want to find out from you all is I want to go back to Mentimeter here for a minute. And if you're in the arena and you're actually one who's performing, folks like Natasha and her are great coaches, and coaches like us, we're actually in the arena with you, right? But you're the one who's actually performing. So what I want to know from you is what you're up against mentally that gets in the way, right? Because we believe you deserve these things to become the best version of yourself, to have access to all the training, to feel connected to a supportive community, which you have already, and to learn and grow. So if you deserve all these things, what's getting in the way mentally from you achieving all these things that you deserve? So let's take a minute here to go to Mentimeter and check that out. We got a word cloud here that's going to pop up here. So please go to your poll and let's see what your mental challenges are. What is getting in the way from you achieving all those things that you deserve? Harmful self-talk, imposter syndrome. I hear that all the time. So harmful self-talk being negative self-talk, right? We all talk to ourselves, right? It's the narrative and the story that we tell ourselves. Doubt, 100%, that's normal. Even though normal is a cycle on the washing machine. What else gets in the way, folks? Anybody else on the chat? Fears, absolutely. And while we're waiting for this to pop up, you know, I'd love to hear from some of our coaches. What are some of the things that our coaches are seeing? If you don't mind taking yourself on mute, what are some of the common mental barriers that you see from your athletes that you're working with in NVDM?
I'm thinking to add to these 4, so give me a second. I know there are a couple other coaches on here as well, if you have something.
If you don't have access to this, please drop it in the chat and Nate will flag that as well.
It's like pain.
Pain. Okay, sure. Guilt. Okay. Interesting as well. What are your thoughts,
Comparison.
Natasha?
Comparison is one for many.
Comparison, like the comparison trap.
Yeah.
That's a great one.
I'm gonna throw out a nasty one, expectations, which I think just jumped up. Mackenzie Vigilanco says time. Time is kind of an enemy on that one.
You said at time or
That's
expectations?
correct.
Sure. Sure. Expectations are the belief that something's going to happen based on our relative experience and our critical information that we give that's reliable in nature, right? That's great. Okay. Oh, life distractions, 100%. Most of us, even though if you're a pro or not, right, this is not something that feeds us, that helps us take care of our family and ourselves, right? So, having to have that work-life integration, that's a challenge for sure. Anything else?
I like that new one that popped up, failure.
Yeah, absolutely, right? Because if you're doing this long enough, you're going to have setbacks, just like I talked about, right? You're going to have that challenge, change, and adversity, and you're going to fail, right? You're going to make mistakes, right? But coming back from that, that's the ultimate challenge. So, okay, so for the sake of time, I'm going to stop sharing. Those are all great examples, and so let's get into the so what here. We see that? So really the important thing here is like we all have these barriers, right? But how do we spend our resources, specifically our attention, our energy within the construct of time to be able to not only remove those barriers, but then to be able to level up and get that edge in terms of a competitor, both within the context of our sport and in life, right? And all of you have heard this idea about holistic training. It's been around for thousands of years. We talk about training the mind. That has to do with the cognitive aspect of who we are and our emotions, or the mental and emotional piece falls under the idea of the mind, right? Even the mind and the brain arguably are kind of two different things that are interrelated. We have the physical aspect of our training for our sport or our activity. And that really fundamentally includes our sleep or our recovery, our physical activity, and then our nutrition, how we feel ourselves. And then the team aspect of our training involves our social and our task cohesion, or our connection within our community, because we're social creatures by nature. It includes trust and rapport and communication, amongst other things. And I used to use the word spiritual side of things too, but in my work with corporate populations, I tend to avoid that because people get confused with spirituality and religion. But fundamentally, what we're talking about is this idea of character. And this is what I taught at West Point in the Air Force Academy, which is really important. It goes back to our moral and ethical decision-making. And it starts with our values, our beliefs, our purpose, which is central to our identity, right? And then the last piece, which gets a lot of attention, that's our craft. That's the technical and tactical aspects of what we do. That includes of all the resources with the equipment, because there's lots of cool, shiny things that are out there. And that's the strategy aspect that kind of goes into that. So my question to you all is how much time do you spend, or actually which area, if you were to pick one or more, which of these areas, going back to Mentimeter, do you spend the most time training? So with the mental, which is our mental, the cognitive and emotional aspects. We have the physical aspects, sleep, nutrition, recovery. We have the team piece, social and task cohesion, our communication and connectedness. We have our character piece, which you could argue is part of that, the spiritual, with the tactical piece, right? Okay, so I've got 4 folks. Looks like physicals got the jump here. No surprise there. We have the tactical piece. 2 of you said there too. 2 said mental. Interesting. And no surprise that a lot of people are not spending time on the character aspect of the training, right? Okay. Any thoughts there? Natasha, does this surprise you seeing this?
Yeah, not at all, actually. I'm surprised there's two people that focus on the mental. I like that you said that.
Yeah,
Completely
absolutely.
overlooked
Cool.
completely.
Cool. Yep. So, and we got one more. We got one more physical that popped up here too. We're going to keep rolling here. So I'll get into that too. So the whole purpose of what we're talking about today is that arguably the most of people say that when it comes to what is the most important thing, and they spend the most of our time spending is usually on this, our craft and our body, right? And the reason why that is because it's tangible. What gets measured gets managed, right? And because we know this is what we can actually see in terms of helping us that's correlated or related to results, right? We tend not to focus in on these other things, even though this is super important. This is super important. This is important. The reason why we don't train these things is because we don't necessarily know how, and we don't necessarily value it, right? Because we don't understand how to quantify it and how to qualify it in terms of our performance and our resilience, right? And so that's what Nate and I are trying to do, amongst other people. We're trying to democratize this idea of mental fitness by helping you learn how to train your brain like you train your body, your team, your character, and your craft, because you don't have to be sick to get better, right? So let's talk about what mental fitness is. So long story short is that it's about getting the most out of what you have to be at your best when it matters the most. That's what it is simply. I've got the working definitions here as well too, if you want to check those out. But why is it important? Well, we all fall under this bridge in life, and this is what mental fitness spans, this psychological spectrum right here. So mental health, especially since the pandemic is getting a lot of the front page news, and rightfully so. We have a global pandemic that 1 in every 2 people at some point in their life is going to suffer some sort of mental health crisis. They're going to experience psychopathology, right? So it's a big deal. It's really important that we understand that, we get the treatment. But guess what? Not everybody needs to go see a therapist or go see a psychiatrist, right? Because there's this entire other spectrum of the psychological spectrum that we live in at different points of our time. We're going to go here, right? And that is obviously something that we're going to do, right? But, a lot of us spend the majority of our lives in the wellness thing where we're coping, right? So sometimes we're surviving, where we're on the brink. Other times that, hey, we're in this coping band. And then it's very few times we're in this very peak performance time as well, too. It's known as the zone or the flow states, right? But we all experience this entire spectrum throughout our lives, right? So the key task here is for us, not only individually, but collectively, is to be able to know where you are on the psychological spectrum, meet yourself and others where they're at, and get them where they need to be, right? And that is fundamentally fits in the coaching model that we have here at NVDM as well, too. Because when you look at even the construct of like a triathlon here, we experience this entire spectrum, right? And you can. And just use this as an example. Maybe you start off with your swim, you're doing a half Ironman like Nate and I did in Galveston back in April, and we're training for Waco, getting ready up here too. You start off, you have an okay swim. You feel good, start off great. That's only 10% of the race, right? Well, then maybe when you transition to your bike, you get into a crash, right? That happens. Maybe you blow a tire. Maybe you got to be able to change that out, right? Maybe you're injured. You don't know whether or not you can go on. You have this activating event that is a stressor that's impacting your response. Okay, so most time you get a crash, you get a scratch, bumps, and bruises. Get your bike repaired. Now you're back on track. But you're back in the coping zone here too, and you're trending upwards up here too. And then all of a sudden, maybe you have a cramp. Maybe that injury that you had on the bike is starting to creep up here, and now you're starting to walk, run. Maybe you're really struggling. Maybe we're having a GI distress moment here, and then you barely finish getting by, right? The point here is that how do you get the most out of what you have, and that you're going to fall along this spectrum even over the course of your competition, right? But it's possible to be simultaneously living in this entire spectrum at one given time, right? And our goal is to be able to meet you where you're at, to get you where you want to go. And more importantly, we want to be able to get left of bang. So what we're noticing, especially with youth athletes, we're even seeing people who don't have an experience with mental skills training or mental fitness training, is that by the time they have this serious event, like this Peloton crash you're seeing here too, is that we tend to be very reactive in nature, right? But we want to build up this capacity and this skill set so that when difficult things happen, that challenge, change, adversity happens, which inevitably is going to within your sports, is that you have the mental fortitude to be able to push through that and thrive and get the most out of what you have towards optimal performances. And ultimately what it's about is about sense and decision making. Because the research shows that you can get a 25% boost just by practicing mental fitness training, using these skills, techniques, and tools. And it can help you with your mental health, your teamwork, your leadership, your culture, and your agility. So we're going to get in, I want to briefly go into the 4 C's of mental toughness, which involve control, commitment, confidence, and challenge. You see with any of these, it looks like a pizza pie. There's 4 elements here. Within these is the factors of life control, emotional control, which also includes imagery, attention. This is all about, commitment is all about developing a roadmap for your success and using motivation and discipline to get results. Challenge is about using the growth versus the fixed mindset to be able to stretch yourself to the edge of yourself, do hard things, and recover and learn from everything regardless of what the outcome is. And then the most important one, I would argue, that I would say we have a confidence crisis, has to do with the belief in yourself, includes your self-talk, how you perceive yourself and others, how you build trust and rapport. The good news, this is an inside out and outside in. And the other good news is that you can actually measure this. You can actually measure your mental mental fitness, which I'm offering everyone the opportunity to send me an email, and you can get a free assessment to understand where you're at right now in terms of your overall mental fitness using the mental toughness questionnaire. Here's how it's measured, which I'm not going to spend a lot of time getting into that. It falls along a scale here that you learn more about. But what I'd like to do is I want to share just a really quick, down and dirty go-to mental skill that you all can practice here tonight and take home with you. And it's this idea of neutral thinking, right? A lot of you have heard about positive thinking and about negative thinking. A lot of you have not heard about neutral thinking. And this comes from the late, great Trevor Moawad. And so I want you to think of your thoughts like this superhighway, right? And mindsets are like the superhighways, these patterns of thinking. So we have these freeways, we have these highways and byways, we have these footpaths, and we have these dense jungles where we don't have these neural pathways built in, right? The idea is to be able to create these dominant patterns, these neurological patterns in our mind in terms of how we think in deliberate and effective and productive ways. And so I want you to think about your thoughts like a traffic light, where your brain is the driver. And at any given time, you have this stoplight format of thinking. So the negative thinking is in the red. That involves stop, right? We have the green light thinking, which is go, which is the productive thinking. And then in the middle, which is more transitional, we have the neutral thinking. There's some positives and negatives to each one of these, which you'll have with you. And I'm going to not refer those right now because we're going to run out of time. But how you put it all together is to move when you have a difficult situation. The key here is to move from negative thinking, which you talked about, which is central to confidence and a belief in yourself and having trust in others on your team, and then move from negative thinking to neutral thinking. So then you can then hit the accelerate button and use what's called psychological momentum to be able to then accelerate your performance in the moment. So the first thing to understand is what's called this. So the concept here is called pogo. So once you think about a pogo stick, and resilience by itself is just like a tennis ball where you hit adversity and you bounce back, and ideally you're coming back to stasis. Well, the reality is that you change every time you encounter some sort of challenge, change, or adversity. We want to be able to then hit that adversity and then be able to accelerate and move into thriving. And that's what a pogo stick does. It takes that energy, it absorbs it, and then allows us to be able to accelerate our performance. And it's possible to do that using pogo. So the first thing we want to do is create space. That's the pause, taking a deep breath, and create separation because we are not our thoughts. The second thing we want to do is we want to observe our thoughts, right? And so I want you to think of yourself using this idea of imagery as like, you're like the bus driver of your own bus, where you're the bus driver and your thoughts are in your mindscape and they're like passengers. You can give them a name, a face, kind of like the movie Inside Out. And I just want you to observe them and separate from them as well too. And then identify which ones are helpful and which ones are hurtful in your mind space on your bus. And then your job as a bus driver is then let people on and off. So in order to go neutral, the thinking that is harmful in terms of red light thinking, allow those thoughts and emotions to get off the bus and allow the more productive thinking to get on the bus. and then be able to take the next best step towards a small victory. So pause, create space, observe, allow your negative thoughts to get off your bus, get your positive thoughts on the bus, and then take the next best step towards a small victory, and then the next step, and then the next step. And if you can practice that over and over again, you're going to notice that that becomes your dominant reaction and response versus a reaction to an adverse event. Practice it amongst yourselves, practice it with your kids, teach it to your athletes. And the more reps and sets you get at this, the more mentally fit you're going to be, the more resilient and mentally tough you're going to be as well too. The last piece here too is I want to wrap up here. I know we're running up on time here. Is that we're designed to perform. We live at the intersection of mental performance, resilience, and leadership. That's our expertise. Our goal is to help you develop the mental strength to win from the inside out. We provide valid and reliable psychological assessments for assessment and selection and placement, both for athletes, businesses, law enforcement, and we provide keynote speaking. We do workshops, both in person and remote and hybrid. We do one-on-one small group coaching. But the thing that differentiates us is our custom e-learning solutions, and that's through our Mental Grit platform and community, which, you know, Natasha, I know we're running up on time. Do we have a moment to talk about the Mental Grit platform?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, Nate, and I can take this off, share for a second too. You know, please tell them about, because again, we want to be able to democratize mental fitness training in a scalable and sustainable solution. It's not good enough just to have an app. You have to have an integrated community. So over to you, Nate.
Thanks, Andy, and thanks everyone for being here as a whole. Like we said before, we're trying to democratize mental performance training. Most of the times when we talk about mental skills, we typically get these skills when we either reach a corporate environment where we get this in like leadership development stuff, and or if you're a high performing individual in the collegiate era or in professional or Olympic. That's really the only place that athletes end up getting access to this stuff. And I thought that was stupid. Because I needed this stuff when I was a kid, because I was a big a-hole to myself, as maybe some of you might have been as well. I was critical. I compared myself to everybody, and my mind actually, destroyed my ability to play, whether it came to golf, lacrosse, triathlon, long distance running, mountain biking, whatever it might have been. After I learned these skills, I thought it was super important. So we ended up developing a platform on an app where we were able to develop and deliver contextualized information to the people who needed it. Obviously, there's a lot of players in psychology. There's the people around you, there's your coaches, and then there's yourself. All three of those people need different information about how to go about the psychology to support. So I would just a quick share screen on what this might look like. If y'all see what is up here, essentially right now I have an athlete training grounds, this is all contextualized information for athletes specifically. I also have a coaches center in this space where we talk mental performance coaching from to the coaches to understand how they can deliver coaching with best practices and mental skills training. And lastly, I also have a space within this app or feed that is all about mental mastery for triathletes specifically, because triathletes need something a little bit different than everybody else, because it is long distance, especially when we get into the Ironman distances. Everyone needs something specific. So I want to develop a platform not only to give access, obviously, to mental performance training for any level of athlete, but also to the parents of those athletes if we're working with kids, and or to the coaches and athletes themselves if we're working with more of an adult population. But each of those players need something a little bit different and understand their role within mental performance training. And so that's what Mental Grit is all about, is to again democratize mental performance training and make sure that everyone has the access to the information that they need in order to perform at their absolute best. And I hope with this information, especially today with Andy, I mean, y'all at this point, I think you know us, and you understand that the what and the why, and like the what and the so what, why the stuff is so important. I just hope y'all know that y'all have a resource now to reach out and ask questions, to get specific information in the role that you're currently in. Realize that we can absolutely provide that for you. So I'm going to go ahead and there. Andy, go ahead and wrap things up.
Thanks a lot, Nate. So this last party shots, here's the contact information to reach out to me. You can take a screenshot of this. You'll have a copy of this. This will be recorded. Check out our book that we help write, best-selling book on Amazon a couple times here called Deliberate Discomfort. Get that on an audiobook as well too. Follow us on social media. Reach out to us. Again, we want to offer a free assessment and a free consultation, whether or not you're interested individually. If you're a coach, we would love to be able to train the NVDM coaches on, so we can work ourselves out of a job, so we can train you to be able to train the mental game to your athletes. I know that's a little bit of a different construct than maybe what you're used to, but we want to work ourselves out of a job because we want everybody to have access to this, just like you're giving access to great physical and technical training within the construct of an amazing community. I live in Montgomery, Texas, by the way. I'm about 3 hours from anywhere in Texas except for West Texas. So I will travel as well too. Love to be able to see in person, or we could talk on Zoom or on the phone. So that's all I have. Thank you so much, Natasha, and the great NVDM community. Back over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Andy and Nate. I really appreciate the presentation and the time you took into preparing that. And yeah, that was awesome. Guys, if you have any questions, I also have Andy's email, but you should have picked that up on the last slide. And then, yeah, we'll get this out to the team, and no doubt there'll be folks watching us tomorrow morning and might be reaching out. So again, thank you so much. Super important stuff, guys. Mental is way more important than physical. We should all have that first on our list. I believe in that fully. So thanks again for your time today.
Thanks, y'all. Keep training your brain. We'll see you in the arena.
Bye, you guys. Thank you. Let me put end. I don't know how to stop record. There we go. Stop video. Okay, good. Good. Thanks, Nate. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think that was rather quick, obviously. And I think we were more set up for an hour today, unfortunately. But all in all, at least I hope that everyone knows that there's someone to turn to with questions in this space. It's sometimes hard to find access to this stuff, unfortunately. So
yeah.
Anyway, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, what you shared at the end there, is that an app or what is that?
Yeah, it's a new community platform that is app-based that we developed just in the last 6 months here. And I am currently just placing all of the material that I've developed over the last 6 years or so in triathlon into that space specifically. So the community members can have access to it, those who are triathletes or triathlon coaches. So
Gotcha. Yeah, okay. Yeah, send that information to me if you can. You have your email address. I'm curious to look into that as well. So, and then hopefully folks will take you up on which is very generous, just like that free consult, just to kind of learn more, because it is such a game changer. I've been fortunate enough being in sports my whole life to work with many mental coaches, and it's
awesome.
Tremendously. Yeah, and sorry for the miscommunication. I thought I was clear with Andy. It's really hard on a Sunday night with people preparing dinner
just
and
to get it out. I didn't even realize how you got 30 minutes with everybody. So
yeah,
I'm proud of you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, so 30 minutes. I wish I was a little more clear, but I think you guys got the message across and presented on some great things. So thank you again.
Well, we appreciate you. I'm going to jump on with him, provide him some feedback as well. But if you have any further questions, please let us know. Okay.
Sounds good. Thanks, Nate.
Thank you. We'll see you later.
Bye.
See you. Bye.